Hello and welcome to Reiki Women podcasts. It's me, Bronwen Logan, and I have with me my two lovely friends. We have Carrie Varela. Hey, Carrie. And we have the beautiful Michaela too. Hey, Michaela. So lovely to be here together. And today we're going to address something that is that all of us deal with at some point in our lives. And it's a feeling that sometimes has a physical response to it. If I think of myself, if you blush possibly, or those sorts of feelings. Anyway, we're talking about shame, and we're looking at the system of Reiki and how it can actually support you if you're feeling shame and you want to work with those feelings. And I'm fascinated to hear what's going to come up today, actually, because shame is it's a scary thing to talk about. And the good thing is that I know that in more recent times, we've been able to, more people are talking about it. And so I think it's our turn, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. So, Carrie, tell me, what do you think about shame?
Oh, it's one of my most favorite feelings. Just joking. But I think it is one of the things that where Reiki has really benefited me. And just from my background, my religious background, and the way I was raised, I internalized a lot of shame that was kind of given to me through, the environment that I grew up in. And in particular, I had some childhood trauma that I remember before I found Reiki. Every time I thought about this particular event and some other events in my childhood, I would like cringe in shame, and just the way I was holding those the emotions of those experiences. I had a visceral body reaction to those feelings, and it was really through Reiki that I was able to release that. And I've seen that with so many of my clients, is that we might be holding on to some emotional baggage, and whether we want to or not, we think about a past experience in our life, and there's just these layers of different emotions that might be there. And Reiki didn't take away that experience. I still lived through those experiences, but there's this emotional cleansing that happened. So I could look at those experiences without that inner cringe, without a sense of reactivity perhaps around it. And it really got me thinking about how Reiki can help us heal emotionally. And I think ultimately, when we can lose some of that baggage around shame, and I appreciate that you pointed out, Bronwyn, that it's kind of a loaded topic. It is a loaded gun in some ways. Sometimes we can talk about it as much as we want to talk about it, but when push comes to shove and we're in that emotional experience, it can be very reactive. It can be really painful. But nevertheless, when we can use Reiki to move beyond those emotions, or use some of the principles of Reiki to help us release that stuck emotional baggage, the benefit of that is that we can walk through our days with a little bit of a more lift in our chest, a little bit more spaciousness, and we can feel better about ourselves. And so I've never really met any other modality that can help me do that more than Reiki. So I'm extremely grateful that
I'm curious, which particular aspects do you feel have helped you the most with that?
I actually have been thinking about it, and well, for sure, the principles, the precepts of Reiki support us. Well, first of all, it helps us ground in today. That first principle of being present to today. So I think sometimes when I'm in an emotional state, or I'm feeling all the yucky feelings, that can arise in that moment, it's like I'm living in the past. So that has been really useful for me. But I also have to say that I think that the symbols are really, really potent. And in particular, Hansanze Shonen. And I've used that in the past to work, with healing beyond space and time, and even go back into memories and experiences I had in my past. That would bring up a lot of emotional pain, and just using that awareness that it's all one, and that I can kind of be in that oneness, and transmit Reiki to past events and future events. So I use that quite extensively, and it really, yeah, really made big shifts for me emotionally.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it really begins with just for today, I'm compassionate with myself because shame is really it's the emotion of not good enough and not strong enough and just not enough. And it's the feeling that says that the worst thing that we've done is the thing that defines us. It's the feeling the opposite of being rooted in our true self, right? Because our true self is the best of us. It's the most whole, complete, connected, expansive aspect of ourself. And our self, the part of ourself that feels shame is the most contracted, the most, limited, and it's completely focused on whatever the worst thing is that we've done. And it's really a tool of oppression. It's something that's applied to people to make us stay in that small contracted space. And Bronwen, as in your introduction, you mentioned that we're in a time when there's a lot more conversation about shame, a lot more understanding of it psychologically and emotionally and spiritually. Of course, Dr. Brene Brown has been a pioneering researcher in this field, and she has a lot to say about this subject. Listeners, if you have not seen her TED Talk on the subject of shame, definitely check that out. But one of the things that she says that I love, that feels very instructive to me and very connected with my Reiki practice, is that if we put shame in a petri dish and studied it and tried to create the perfect conditions for shame to thrive, we would add silence, secrecy, and judgment, and it would just absolutely thrive. But if we doused that same petri dish of shame with empathy and with compassion, it could not survive. It would perish. And the antidote to shame is spaciousness, is exposing that feeling of shame to the light. Because shame is not the same thing as guilt or self-responsibility, right? Because there might be things that we've done or that we feel, or places where we're out of alignment with ourself or our values or with our community, that do require us to take responsibility and to take action and to make changes. But we can't do that if we're ashamed, because when we're ashamed, we can't tolerate talking about it. We're exposing ourselves, right? So silence, secrecy, judgment, all of that we pour on ourselves when we're feeling shame. All of that we pour on other people when we think they should be ashamed of whatever it is that they've done. And we cannot grow, and we cannot be our true self, and we cannot be fully compassionate with ourselves and others, and we cannot embody the precepts in any way, shape, or form when we are trapped in that feeling of shame. It just puts the brakes on all of it. And so, when Dr. Brown says applying empathy, creates the conditions where shame cannot survive, to me, that's just for today. I'm compassionate with myself. I'm compassionate with other people who might be mired in that shame, or might have done something that maybe part of me thinks they should be ashamed of. It's Joshin Kokyoho, which, I've said so many times in these conversations, gives us the embodied physical sensation of spaciousness, of there being more room inside of us to hold all of it, right? Because we have to be able to hold the things that we've done that might cause us to feel ashamed, the thoughts that we've had, the misconceptions that we have, whatever it is, whether or not it's, justified. A lot of the things that we're ashamed of are in our own imagination, right? They're things we've blown out of proportion. They're things that have been put on us by other people. Or they're things that we honestly have done that we need to make amends for. But whatever that is, that feeling of shame constricts us. And the practice of Joshin Kokyoho and the practice of the precepts puts space, makes enough room so we can say, okay, this thing that I'm ashamed of exists inside of me, but so does everything amazing and beautiful that I've ever done. So does my true self. So does my whole and complete self exists inside of me, right alongside these things that I feel ashamed of. It gives that breath of fresh air, that spark of light that creates conditions in which shame can't persist. And when that happens, when we, move shame through our body, then we can take an honest look at whatever the thing is and, determine, is this something that I need to take action on, make amends for, make a shift, reconcile, seek forgiveness, offer myself forgiveness for, whatever it is. That's going to be the thing that brings everything back into balance. It's never going to be shame. Shame will never bring us back into balance. It will only keep us constricted and keep us stuck in judgment and silence. And so, yeah, these simple, just accessible tools of the system of Reiki just profoundly change the conditions of shame inside of us.
Wow. And that was very powerful. Yeah. I mean, when I think of shame, there's a number of things that come to mind. And if I think of it personally, yeah, I feel like experiencing shame, it's definitely something that you have a sense in you that you want to avoid, don't you? You want to avoid shame. Like, you don't want to go near that. And I can only think of myself as a kid, and like when I was in primary school and lying about something and being found out for lying, and how it was such a momentous thing that, the shame that I felt, and how it, these are the things, I guess, as humans, it teaches us something, doesn't it? It taught me I shouldn't do that, right? I shouldn't lie. And this is the resulting feeling that is coming from having taken that action. So it taught me, in a way, something about myself, and it taught me something that I've always held very dear to me, which was, don't make up stories and lie, because you're going to get found out by someone somewhere. I know that seems like a very outward thing, but that's my little child in me speaking and talking from their experience, from that experience. And yeah, so yeah, but shame, I guess when I think about it, I think about words. And so it's, I think you've both spoke to that, but it's like the things that are going on in our head, and that they're things that often, we can repeatedly feel shame if we have those words going on in our heads again and again and again from something that may have happened to us, and or something that did happen to us. But then what are we creating? We can create a story out of that. It's like the words in our head, when we repeat them over and over again, it's like we're etching them into our being. But it's not so we're creating a being that isn't, as you were saying, Michaela, it's not who we are, and but it's something that we are creating. So we don't want to do that. And the power of words are so incredibly strong, and which brought me to thinking about Kodadama, so the mantras that we use within the system of Reiki, and the power of words. Yes, when we verbalize them, so we take the breath from the hara and words come out, we can think of that as a very ritualized thing, but for me, just I think I've said this before, but for me, just speaking is the same. I mean, everything that I'm speaking, it's moving with the breath, it's coming from me, it's a blending of my mind, my thoughts, my hara, and it's coming out through the breath. So everything that I speak is Kodadama. So it is this spiritual life force, that it's a way of expressing myself. But also the thoughts in my head, I feel, are related as like a precursor to the Kodadama, and they are a part of the Kodadama, because without that, nothing would happen. So these words that are going on in our minds and what they are creating are so important, because they are like the seed to this spiritual experience of speaking. So this seed inside of us, these words inside of us, we need to, as you were saying, Michaela, give them compassion. Yeah, and I think Carrie said that too. It's that love for ourselves. And last week we spoke about how in Shintoism, it's believed that we all come from something good, and the world, the universe, is good. And it's just those other things that we create that then, like this etching these bad words, if you like, these bad thoughts into ourselves, that is not actually a natural part of the universe. And it's us not being aware of what we're doing. It's not what we're bringing into consciousness. If we're balanced and in the flow, should be a mirroring of this goodness. If we're totally in the flow and balanced, then we are just going to be the universe, and that does not hold on to these thoughts that are not a natural part of our being, if you like.
Yeah, that's so powerful, Bronwen, because this fundamental belief that the world is good and that we are of the world and so we are good. And shame is, again, it's a feeling of not enoughness, and it's really well adapted to the belief system that says we are fundamentally bad and that we're wicked by nature, and that we have to do a lot of work to be good. We have to become good because we're essentially wicked. And so we should be ashamed of that. And so we should work hard to do that. And, even just this mindset shift that you're describing, that, is a cultural difference between Eastern and Western thought, I believe, and subsets of those, that we're fundamentally good, and that what we need to do is remember that, and then act in accordance with that. It's such a more easeful and beautiful way of doing our work as people. And then this piece around the Kodadama and the words that we say, that's an aspect of bringing light and bringing spaciousness to the things that we're ashamed of. Because again, shame exists in the dark. It exists, and by dark, I don't mean the like fertile, nourishing darkness. I mean like the darkness of hiding, the darkness of concealing, of being secret, of being silent, and silent, in a way that is oppressive rather than a silence that's peaceful. And so when we speak, the things that we're ashamed of, it takes the power out of the shame. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, and once I became aware of this, I started doing it as a practice. And so I just want to invite everybody to think about a time when there was something that you felt ashamed of, and it could be a tiny little thing, but or it might be a big thing, something that you felt ashamed of, and that you took a chance, you took a risk to say it out loud to somebody. And what's the feeling of that? Like, how does that change how you feel, right? And I know for me, like that, the magic of speaking the thing out loud, bringing it out into the air and the spaciousness and the light, took the power out of the shame, right? It didn't make the thing less serious, right? If it was a serious thing, it doesn't make it less serious and less, in need of being addressed, but it takes the power out of the shaming and the constriction. And so I love that you linked that with Kodadama. I think that's a beautiful way of connecting our Reiki practice.
And if we're holding those things inside of us, then, this, when we talk about spaciousness, there is no spaciousness, because we're holding these things, and once again they become who we are, but they're not who we are. But yes, if they're taking up, if they're cluttering out, if we clutter ourselves with these things, then there's no space for creativity and being here now in the moment together. I love what you said about the difference between the East and the West, because it just reminded me that, women in Christian belief, women were the source of evil. So that's not like we come from something good. In fact, we're always meant to be, that's always meant to be controlled and managed. Yeah,
and being shamed for that, right?
Oh,
Like you're
goodness.
fundamentally, evil, right? Like you women brought evil into the world where it didn't exist before. And we should be fundamentally ashamed of ourselves for that. And we should be in a constant state of atonement for that, and making up for that. Like that's our life is about redeeming ourselves from that original sin. Like it's just, it's embedded into a certain worldview, and it's profoundly oppressive to believe that, right? And it's so much work to like navigate that as a person.
Yeah, it's intergenerational. I mean, it's passed down. And yet, we've also talked about what else is passed down when we were talking about the strength of the hatha, but also the weaknesses. It's interesting, isn't it? How we are a result of all of these things. Carrie.
I mean, I feel like this is my childhood, I mean, I feel like there was so much of that kind of worldview shoved down my throat, and impacted my worldview and my dialogue inside of myself. And I know one big shift for me. Well, I found the book "The Power of Now" by Eckhart Tolle, and if you ever just read the introduction of that book, it's just so profound, and it
Have we
shares
discussed this? We have discussed this. No one's ever finished that book, right?
right.
You have to, if someone is watching this who's finished the book, please leave a message and let me know.
Let us know.
Someone.
It's quite an accomplishment if you have finished that book.
The first part's fantastic. I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, the introduction,
Yeah.
it's about the power of now. So, I mean, you can't, you can only pick it up every once in a while, get all the way through. But, anyways, I love his story. I love his story at the beginning. I used to speak to it in some of my Reiki courses, because he talked about his own journey and how he loathed himself. He really loathed himself, and the inner dialogue that he had within himself was just all this negative self-talk, and there was no positivity. And I'm sure there was a lot of contraction around those feelings, thoughts, and emotions. And then he had a profound spiritual experience where he realized like all of that stuff was just his false sense of self. And in a kind of a profound healing event, he had this like vortex of energy move through him, and he was able to release that, and he experienced this totally different inner peace, where for years that that negative self-dialogue no longer ruled his inner state. And I feel like that was what's happened to me really with Reiki. It just it sparked that sense of like, I am good, I am bright, there's so many redeeming things about myself. And so I was able to like cleanse all of those thoughts, and those kinds of thoughts didn't rule my mind. Really from the moment I found Reiki, it just was like a complete on and off shift. But as these things happen, it can creep back in. And when it has creeped back in, I really recognize that there is something in my shadow self, or there's some emotions that are uncomfortable, that I'm not willing to feel, or there is, a negative way, or I'm holding on to self-judgment, like Michaela was saying. I think that's so true. I think judgment is a huge piece of shame. and not offering ourselves the work of compassion first. Yeah, we can be compassionate with everybody else in our life, but if we're not offering compassion to ourselves, I think we can exacerbate some of these issues in our mental health and emotional health. But for me lately, my work is when I'm in kind of a healing space, when I'm receiving a Reiki treatment or doing a meditation, I am allowing more spaciousness around whatever it is I'm feeling, and allowing a movement or a flow. So even if I am feeling something that doesn't feel exactly comfortable, I try to sit with it until I can get some feeling of fluidity through it, so that it doesn't feel stuck, that doesn't feel like it's just lingering there, or I'm trying to push it away. And then I think when I'm in that state, I can be more in the flow of my emotions, and I can have compassion for myself when I'm not feeling, I'm feeling like the weight of something heavy inside of me emotionally. I can offer myself compassion for that, but I can also recognize that I don't have to be married to those emotions. Like, I don't have to feel like I am aligned with them in any way. When they're ready to go, I'm fully ready to shed them too. And but there's a lighter, more spacious way of being with myself and in the world that is definitely possible. So I know how to find that place, but for me, I also have to work with honoring and acknowledging those deeper emotions, and allowing them to move through.
Yeah, I think compassion is definitely an antidote, if you like, to shame. Mm.
And I think compassion for the ways in which, I feel like some people are really stuck in that place. Potentially you could live your whole life stuck in childhood trauma, or negative ways in which we're imprinted by the world. And that intergenerational healing is so important. When I think about my kids, and just like what a different way, the conversations that I'm having with my children become their inner dialogue, especially in those early. So how can we shift the way we talk about ourselves, out loud, especially to children? I think that makes it's huge. It's a huge way to shift that generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that piece is huge, because shame is passed along. I mean, it absolutely is passed along. It's inherited. It's something that is part of intergenerational trauma, can be. Yeah, back to what you were saying about Kodadama, that the power of the words that we say, the vibration of them, and the vibration of the feelings that are behind them, not only stay inside of our body, but they get passed, they get transmitted. And so, whether we're speaking about our own self in a way that reveals the shame we might feel about certain things, certain aspects of ourself, and our kids pick up on that, and they internalize that, oh, these are things that I should be ashamed of as well, or things that we're talking about other people, how they should be ashamed, that all of that gets picked up and gets incorporated into their sense of self. It becomes that detritus that gets layered on top of their true self, the garbage and the junk that covers up the bright light of their true self and our own. It becomes the work that they have to do in the future, or that they're invited to do, that they have the opportunity to do, to clear all of that away. I suspect if we were to, again, back to the Petri dish example, the science example, right? I love using science examples to talk about spirituality, but if we were to take a sample of the junk that's covering up our great bright light, right? That's in the way, those coverings that are dimming that light that's always there, that's always bright, that's always clear and pure. And we were to study it, under a microscope, I suspect we would see an awful lot of shame residue inside of that garbage, inside of that gunk that's covering up our true self. And so, doing this work of clearing shame out of our system, and shifting it inside of ourselves so that we are not passing it along in the words that we use and the actions that we take to that next generation would go a huge way in, just helping not only ourselves, but our community to be more of ourself, more of our true self, more of our bright light, more peaceful, more connected and compassionate. Just that one thing, I think, would make a huge difference.
Yeah. And the thoughts that we think, that we don't even express these things sometimes as words because they're too shameful. So, yeah. Yeah, and that the thing of the great bright light, I was thinking about that, and talking about shining into the dark. I mean, that's definitely an aspect of the system of Reiki. It's what we talk about, especially with symbol 4 and the Kodadharma for that, and that we are this great bright light. So if we are this great bright light, those little corners of darkness don't exist. And that's where, when we're practicing, we're pushing through that light, and moving and shifting those aspects of us that are hidden in the dark. So yeah, that's that's a really beautiful part of the system of Reiki, that it can support us with that. So I think we've come around to the end, and thank you everyone for sharing that with us. A little chat about shame. Ugh. And
Obviously, your promotion, Bronwen.
it just makes me go frizzle. So
I want to, as we're ending, I want to invite everybody into a little practice. So for those of you listening, if you're resonating with what we're sharing about shame, I want to just invite you into a little challenge sometime in the next week or so. Think about something that you're carrying a little bit of shame around, and something small, something, not the big thing, not the thing that you're like, that's deepest down in the darkest place, right? But something that you feel a little bit of shame about, and you're maybe feeling really hesitant to talk about it because of that feeling of shame. And the challenge is to just say that to somebody. Pick somebody that you trust, maybe somebody who's not involved in the situation, so they're not attached to it. Just somebody that you would feel brave enough to just say this thing out loud, not in a way of them trying to solve it, trying to fix it, change it for you, but just, hey, I just need to get something off my chest. Here's this thing that I'm feeling some shame around. And just notice what happens inside of you. What happens as you move throughout your day? What happens in relationship to that thing, right? Just notice if anything shifts or opens up for you by the practice of speaking it out loud, bringing some light, bringing some spaciousness around that thing. See what happens and let us know.
Okay, I will, Michaela.
Excellent. Excellent. And if you would like to do a little bit of more extended practice on this, you can join us for our new practitioner circle, our new Reiki practice group, Embodying Reiki, that will be taking place on the first Sunday of every month, beginning in April. So it's coming up very, very soon. Our very first one. We'll be drawing those practices from the topics of the podcast from the previous month. And so this one will very likely show up in our first practice circle on April 1st. So that link to register will be down below in the show notes, and we hope to see you there.
Absolutely. And is it April 1st? I thought it was the 2nd.
Well, you could be right. My brain's
maybe that's just in my part of the world.
Oh yeah, for you, no, you're right. For me, it is April 2nd, and for you,
it's the 3rd for me. Cool. Yep.
Sunday, right? The first Sunday, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we'll be seeing you all there. And Carrie, are you going to be there or not? Or you'll be away?
I might be there. I think I'm there.
Okay, cool. Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And that's it for today, everyone. Lots of love from all of us. Big kisses. Mwah. See you later.